I would call that what you did with him a stunt, and you actually have a whole chapter about stunts.
Yep.
What kind of disappoints me is you don't see that very often today.
I think the kind of goofy stunts that happened, you know, years ago, I don't think people do them anymore, and I think the press probably would just laugh at it, you know, although they were fun.
Yeah. Everybody goes on
one
some TV
that
show or another.
Made an impression on me was when you nearly killed the Scarecrow, Ray Bolger.
Oh, God, that wasn't even a stunt. It was just, we thought it was a good idea. Raul Julia, the wonderful Be Still My Heart, Raul Julia was in
Where's Charlie?
Where's Charlie at the Circle and Square.
I love that musical.
I do too. It was a wonderful production, and he was delicious. And one day we got word that Ray Bolger, who had originated the role that Raul was playing, wanted to come to see the show, and I said yes, of course, and I arranged it, and I went to Raul and to Mr. Bolger before the show, and I said, before, it wasn't at the show, but, you know, days before, and I said, would Mr. Bolger be interested in leading the audience in Once in Love with Amy? Thank you. Together we can do this. And he said, of course. So the deal was that at the end of the show, at the curtain calls, Raul would stop the applause and would introduce Ray Bolger, and he would come out and lead the audience in Once in Love with Amy. And my part of it was that I would tip the press to come at 10 o'clock to the Circle in the Square for this wonderful event, which was great, except that at the end of the first act, where that number falls in the show, in the musical, Raul got carried away. And he stopped the show at the end of the first act, and he said, ladies and gentlemen, the real Charlie Wickham is here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Ray Bolger. And Ray Bolger came bounding out on the stage and led the audience in Once in Love with Amy, and everybody was ecstatic, and it was wonderful and endearing, and Raul was thrilled, and Ray Bolger was thrilled, except there was no press. So I wasn't thrilled. So they ran off into the wings at the end of the act, and I sort of ran after them, and in the just off stage, it's called the VOM at the Circle in the Square, the vomitorium, which sounds terrible, but it's just the exit. I found Ray Bolger sitting in a chair, beet red, panting, and people around him very concerned that he might be having a heart attack. And all I could think of was that Raul Julia and I have killed Ray Bolger.
He was the Scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz.
He was the Scarecrow and wonderful, and was enchanting that night. And so, aside from the fact that I was afraid that I had killed this extraordinarily wonderful actor, I was also horrified that no press was there for this. And so
this is why she's lasted for 40 years.
And I'm a press agent. That's why, you know. And so, when he finally got his breath back and he was okay, and he said no, he was just out of breath. I said, that was so wonderful, but I don't suppose you could do it again. And they both said, sure. And they did. So that was a very successful
And he
stunt.
survived.
And he lived to tell that we did not kill Ray Bolger.
Right.
You had a very special relationship with Lauren Becall.
I did, and I hear you do too.
Well, we'll leave that one aside, but the idea was that she was really your big break in this business.
She was very much my big break. I was a very young apprentice. I don't think I was even apprenticing to the union in the Bill Dahl office. Bill Dahl was a big Broadway press agent, and I was a lackey. I was very low on the totem. I was the low man on the totem pole, and we were handling this new musical called Applause, starring Lauren Becall, written by Comden and Green and Adams and Strauss songs, and it was Ron Field directing and choreography. It was a big deal, and everybody in the office worked on the show. And everybody was scared of her because she could be tough. And they had a tendency to kind of not always tell her the truth because it was easier. And I was this young, innocent kid, and she would ask me if something was done, and I'd say, I don't know, I'll find out, and if it isn't, I'll fix it. And she would ask another one of the press agents if something was done, and they would say yes, because it was easier to not you know, bring on a scene. And I wasn't doing it to be manipulative or conniving, or I mean, I was just
being honest.
I was just being honest, and I was
being Eve Harrington.
I was not being Eve Harrington. I was definitely not being Eve Harrington, who was the the evil in the play. And one day, I was called into the producer's office, and they said, Becall has informed us that the only person she will talk to in the Bill Dahl office is Susan Schulman. So at the ripe old age of about 23, I wound up handling what became the biggest hit show on Broadway. And it was totally because of her. And she was wonderful to me. I adored her. I never saw, the mean side, the tough side was never directed at me ever. And I think it was partly that she knew I was a little kid and that I probably would have crumbled, you know, because tough I wasn't. And I think she also knew that I cared about her and that I was very protective of her. And I mean, she was wonderful to me. So I have no bad Betty stories. I've heard lots of them and I know lots of them.
Well,
but
you didn't work on
never.
Woman of the Year.
No, I didn't. That was a whole.
Because apparently, it seemed like there was a very different Betty on Applause than there was on Woman of the Year.
I think it was I think Applause was a very happy time in her life. She had always wanted to do a musical. This was created for her. It was created around her persona, around her skills, which were, you know, not
minimal.
You know, she was not a great singer, and she was the first one to tell you.
Nor a great dancer.
No, but what she had was used, and that's actually
was terse, and
it was definitely terse.
And she looked good doing it.
She looked good, and
really
but it
good.
was really designed to make her look good, and it did. I mean, that doesn't happen anymore.
No.
You know, people don't create musicals for a star; they create them and then they cast somebody. You know,
But Woman
it's
of the Year
backwards.
was kind of made for her.
I think it was too. Yes,
You know.
but this was a very happy time in her life.
What was Times Square like then, as opposed to today?
When I started out,
when you
it was tough. It was not nice. You know, it was cruddy.
So this is in the
70s, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One of my first big jobs after Bill Dahl and all was I worked for a press agent named Merle Dubusky,
Right.
who is still with us. And Merle's office was in a building on 55th and 8th. And the week that I started my job as one of his associates, there was an article in New York Magazine naming that building as one of the Pimp headquarters of the Western world.
Oh, dear.
And I would go into work in my little, you know, press agent outfit, whatever that was, my little dress and and there would be girls in hot pants and, you know, tank tops and whatever.
And they weren't press agents?
No, and they would stop me and not them in the lobby. And I was
You
like,
were a novelty.
I was very much a novelty, but that was the early 70s.
Right.
So,
And finally, after all these years
Mm-hmm.
of prepping people to do what you're doing now, how does it feel to be the one on camera?
it's mighty odd.
Susan L. Schulman, Backstage Pass to Broadway. Susan,
More True Tales.
More
This
True
is the
Tales.
second edition.
Second edition.
And it's, I guess, on Amazon
It's
and
on Amazon.
bookstores.
It's a drama book. In fact, I don't know, I'm not sure when we're airing this, but I'm doing an event at the Drama Bookshop on September 24th
I think we could probably
with
publicize
Peter
it for
Marks, who is the
Oh, yes.
Washington Post theater critic, is doing it with me. I'm very
you. And
honored.
who has a lovely little blurb on
And
the
who
front.
liked my book, go
Right,
figure,
cover,
right?
yeah.
Yes, but the way I talk about it, I say this is a book about some of the incredibly famous people I've worked with, mostly wonderful and some not so much.
On that note, thank you, Susan L. Schulman, very much for joining us.
Thank you both.